So I wanted to get started asking about the development of the documentary. What really interested you in making the film, and how did it really get started? Where did the initial inspiration for the film come from? What was that experience like of really coming up with the idea for the film?
So the inspiration was a project that we worked on at Africa as a Country called Climate Politics, which was looking at um, extractive economies and tax justice, and then its relationship to the climate crisis. Um, while doing that, and a lot of times in the work we do as like a written publishing outfit, we think about ways to reach new audiences, and we decided to try with this to try to create a documentary that we thought could kind of present this information in new ways. Um, just about, the climate crisis is obviously the largest crisis amongst many crises that we are facing. So we thought that, okay, why not try to aim high and the motivation, the motivation behind the work of Africa as a country in general is about advancing African perspectives, both on African issues, but also on global issues. So it's kind of like the multifaceted motivation for making the project.
Also, speaking of working with Africa as a country and working with them on the film in particular and producing with them, how did you really collaborate together to get the project made and into production as well?
Obviously, we're a community mostly of people who write, but there's also, artists and filmmakers within, you know, that write for us and also in our community. So we just drew on the collaborations that we had. We had at the time a staff that was doing video content for us. She was the first the location director for the South Africa shoot, which was our first shoot. Um, and then our current editor, who was at the time the staff writer, became kind of like the the kind of location producer for the South Africa site. So we drew on our immediate network, and then in terms of um, sorry, kind of filmmaking network beyond is that we, in our work, the communities that we work with, like Mathare Just Social Justice Center, who is featured in the Kenya section, we had already helped them, gave them funding to produce their own documentary project. So it's kind of like a natural kind of extension of our work that was put into this kind of more comprehensive feature length documentary.
So speaking about the locations, what was that experience like as well? And once you began production on the film to decide where you wanted to shoot and secure those locations as well.
It all came through existing relationships. We were doing research about many different extractive economies across Africa, like Congo, and there's big ones that we didn't touch, like Congo, Nigeria with oil. And this one just came up. One of the lawyers working with the community invited Will, who's our editor, to come do collaborative work with the community, the Amadiba community in South Africa. And so it was just a natural thing. They had already been going. It's like, well, why don't we just bring a camera? There's this trial coming up. And so we were there. There was actually another film team there for the trial. So we just kind of brought cameras along to existing relationships. The Amadiba community is a beautiful community, and their like sense of kind of empowerment is very impressive. So when you're there, you just really feel like you're part of this warrior community. Um, Mathare Social Justice Center as well, like the same experience. The Mathare community is also very resilient. And as far as the Sahrawi refugee camp, we were invited by a team at Progressive International, who was approached by the ambassador of the Sahrawi Republic to Europe, kind of invited a delegation to come tour. That's the only site I personally didn't visit. We had our collaborator Raouf Meraga from Algeria, who's already in the country. He's Algerian, so it's easy for him to just take the flight down to southern Algeria to be part of this delegation.
Also, speaking about the research, once you began working on the film, how did you really research the subject? What was that process like in really finding more information for the film?
That's actually, it's funny. So we started kind of doing research on Africa specifically, but I in order to get a global context, I started going to different conferences, and reading different authors. We interviewed some of them for the film. We're about to publish this week one of the interviews we did with Thea Rio Francos, who's a professor at Providence College. So, but really kind of one of the clearest places for like the formation of the argument of the film happened at the Haymarket Books Socialism Conference in Chicago. I think 2022 it was, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was 2021 or 2022. And there was a debate between the so-called degrowthers and then the eco-modernists. It was very fascinating to see this kind of like US conversation about the energy transition. And then what I really set out to do is like figure out what the African continent and maybe the global South in general's place was within this conversation about how to have a green transition. Because this wasn't a debate about like whether we should get off fossil fuels or not. This was like everybody in the room agreed that, you know, we need to have an energy transition. It was just the mode for it. Um, and I was like, what is the place of Africa in this conversation? And that is kind of what the um, motivating kind of message behind the film is.
During the filming of the movie, how did you also approach directing? And what was your process like in approaching directing the film and getting it together in that sense?
Ironically, I actually started out as the producer.
Mhm.
um, I didn't I didn't really do directing on the ground, but I worked with people remotely. And so, I conducted all the interviews. Well, after a certain point, I conducted the interviews. And so I would find somebody in the place like London or Nairobi or wherever we were doing the South Africa. And then I would work with the camera person remotely and do video interviews, which was an interesting experience. It was also, we started this project during the COVID pandemic. So, and we were thinking about like how to not have this big carbon impact flying around the world. So, we kind of did this remote filming thing where I worked with and the process ended up, I worked with the camera people and local directors, and the process ended up being very collaborative and very rewarding in that sense, where it was like, you know, giving the freedom to camera people from the country that they're filming in to be able to present it in a way that they want to see it. And then I took all the assembled footage and built the story around kind of like all the research that we had done. So it was that kind of combination of taking all the visual bits and then kind of crafting it into a story in the editing process.
And speaking about the people who you've interviewed for the film, what was that experience like as well? And figuring out who you wanted to speak with and then bringing them on board for the film.
Yeah, the I would say producer slash subjects, the first one, so Will Shoki and Wangui Kimari, and then Hamza Hashimani were probably the first three identified subjects. Um, they're contributors and editors, and I work with them every day, so I know them well. And so so the interviews were very natural because they were like personal. Um, and then from there, it was people that they knew, and it just kind of became this like network. And again, it felt very collaborative. So it was like Wangui had worked with Mathare Social Justice Center. We kept working with them after. So, and so we had close relationships with the subjects um, that we interviewed. And so they became personal, like, and we, you know,
And also, like you mentioned, working with the camera team to shoot the videos and for the interviews. And what was the experience like? Also, working with them on the visuals as well as like figuring out like the score and just like incorporating like the score into the visuals as well.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was a collaborative mind named Lamin Fofana was the score. And then the camera people, so I'll tell you who they were. So it was Soho Kupa in South Africa. It was Onesmus Karanja in Kenya, who's both Soho and Onesmus are Africa as a country um, staff or regular contributors. And then Raouf Meraga in Algeria, who came via our sports editor, Maher Mezahi, who's based in Algiers. And then the score was Lamine Fofana, who is my longtime collaborator and former roommate in New York, also fellow Sierra Leonean. And he produced he's like a techno DJ. And so he kind of did like an ambient. I wanted to do something that wasn't like kind of like, stereotype Africa. I wanted something that was futuristic and metallic and grating, but also, you know, creative and beautiful. And I think Lamine was the perfect person to create that. So um, he kind of, we were in New York and we did in person. We sat and we watched the film and talked about different moods and different intentions. And he went home and kind of DJ'd to the film. He kind of did like a live
Mhm.
set to the film and then sent me back bits. And then I worked with the editors in Milwaukee, where I was based when we were finishing, and we kind of finalized everything there.
And speaking also of the editing process, were you editing the interviews and just the footage in general during the shoot, or was it more towards like the end of the shoot? How did you really approach putting the film together?
It was all after, and we like really didn't even have a story. I actually went through different directors and different editors first before taking it on myself. And so we didn't really have a story, and it was kind of like a lot of writing actually. I'm a writer, so that's how I kind of wrote the film before I edited it, right? I watched all the thing and I'm like, this is the story. And so I wrote kind of like an essay about Africa and the energy transition and the place of mineral extraction in that. So that's how, so then once we had the written script, then we kind of just took the interviews and we kind of placed it in to fit like puzzles into this written script. And then after that, we took the stories that illustrated the narratives that were being told in the interviews.
At any point, did any of the interviews maybe change like the narrative and the story for the film, or did you
Oh
mainly
yeah,
stick to like it? What was that
yeah.
process like? It like kind of changing during the interviews.
Reactive and learning from the subjects and like so you saying that I immediately think about our Kenya section I, and realizing like this is what the community wanted to talk about um and then what that taught me was like, okay, so they're talking about planting trees as a form of social justice. Why? And like one of the subjects says like, well, in this neighborhood there's trees and people don't get killed by the police in this neighborhood, and in our neighborhood we don't have trees and the police kill us, so we just need trees. And it's like, oh, it's kind of like simple. It's like how the neighborhood looks also humanizes the inhabitants. So at first I don't think that was in the script, but then that became something that we focused on, that became a story. It's like, well, this is an example of this kind of justice that like we started out looking at what was the inequality in Nairobi in the middle section, and then at the end of that section, we say, well, this is how this community kind of addresses it. And these are the methods the tools that they have at their disposal in order to kind of counteract.
Yeah, with the film about to play here in New York, I live in New York, and swear that it's playing at the New York African Film Festival in a couple of weeks. What does that mean to you to be able to share the film here in New York and the U.S. and really share like your experiences with the audience here as well?
The best like reception we've gotten is on the African continent. So to have something like the New York African Film Festival is to bring African perspectives to New York and to the United States. I lived in New York for a few years, and I know lots of people there, so I'm excited to share it with them in community. But I think especially the New York African Film Festival to give a platform for African films and African ideas and African perspectives is very like you can't take that for granted. It's such a gift to both New Yorkers and to Africans to be able to have that space.
After, after the festival here, what's coming up next for the film? Are you going to other festivals or have an official like release lined up as well?
Our next festival screening, so we've shown in Algeria at the Bijaya Encounter is the French translation. I'm not gonna butcher French, the real French name. And then we'll show here, and then we're gonna show at the Durban International Film Festival in South Africa, which I'm very excited about because that is a big, again, like it would be great for Sundance and all these like places to be like going to Africa and looking for stories and centering them, but that's just not the reality of the world we live in. To have the biggest kind of film festival on the African continent, or biggest film kind of showcase on the African continent, give us attention. It's very reaffirming.
And what do you hope that audiences around the world could take away from the film and really learn about the subject and while watching the movie?
I think I'll just start with my personal motivation in all my work. Like I've worked in music, I write, now doing film. It's always about humanization for communities and peoples that are just kind of written off and forgotten about and dehumanized in every kind of form that they are. So I think that's what I want people to take away from this, is that communities that you don't necessarily always think about are humans. They're people with dreams and desires, and they want democracy. They want access to futures, just like you do wherever you are, right? And I think that's what I want people to always take away from any work that I do.
I think that was mainly it, but thank you again for taking the time to speak with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you coming on the screening? To the screening?
If I want to go see it in person as well, I was able to watch the film online before we chatted today, but the publicist also asked, so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Good afternoon.
You too. Thanks again.
I'm a farmer. That's what I'm doing for a living. Nothing more. We have a land invasion in the name of investors. Where are we? What do you want? When they're going to build titanium into a smart city. That means communities, we are not existing when it comes to development. Our ancestors are everywhere. You cannot say that are only in graves. They are there in the ocean, they are here in the rivers, they are here in the waterfalls. Where there's water, our ancestors are there. That's African culture, that's African tradition. And the most painful thing is that when these investors, they come, try to invade our territory, our land, our ocean, they said that Eastern Cape is the most poor of the poorest. Are we poor? or they want to make us more poor.